is in your hands. You are establishing clear expectations about effective engagement through quality assurance, which is based on professional respect, equitable power. That's interesting. Sometimes in schools you'll feel that a teacher has more experience than you, has actually more power and more right to their judgment than you do. Well, that's something to navigate. Sometimes that is true, sometimes maybe not so. But this is important. Shared understanding, shared responsibility. It's everyone's responsibility. Open-mindedness. That's sometimes difficult to demonstrate about new or different perspectives. Professional communication about thinking. And here, there's that consistent understanding, sort of shared understanding that it's similar, ensure consistent, and there it is there, of the criteria and the standards, accessible elements, discernible differences, what constitutes and where to find evidence and student responses. So we're firmly in this camp. And if you look at these ones, you can see that that's the next step, because you're engaging, you're comparing samples and resolving and reaching consensus and reflecting. Now, I pose this question to you. What structure to your conversation would you like to have in your group moderation? Are you just going to leave it to chance and say, look, we'll just sit down and we'll just hash it out, or are you going to decide on some process or method? Maybe it's worth thinking about. Are you going to get everyone to sit around and give everyone 10 minutes to read each person's script that you've annotated? So you could actually sit in a circle and you could pass your annotations around to each individual in the group so they read and get a sense, or you can do it completely differently. Maybe just have a think about and research. That's in my blackboard too. Do you want to have a chat about that now? Or do we keep moving?
How long would, obviously the curriculum head of the department would oversee this?
Yes.
Would you really be allowed, if there were, say, 7 English teachers in the school, 10 minutes each? Like, that seems like time's tight. As teachers, we're being part of an emerging area. I'm seeing teachers who are underpaid until they get their level. Is allowing an hour and a half for something like this realistic?
I'm going to say it depends on how experienced your teachers are, how often that task has been done before, and how well your teachers know it, how familiar they are with the syllabus. So I'm not going to give you a yes or a no answer.
I think coming back to that ounce of prevention, pound of cure thing, I think if you'd have done this properly at the start of the semester, the one at the end will be abbreviated.
Agreed.
That's just an observation from somebody who's new to it.
There are not going to be any grenades going off, there's not going to be any stress because no teacher has forgotten to teach a particular thing, which means there aren't difficult decisions for the HOD to make because one whole class is completely different to the others. And what do you do about that? So I would agree with you.
If you set the path at the beginning before anything happens, you're more than likely all going to end up in the same destination at the end of the unit.
And I did say last week that the student responses are the easiest to mark and the quickest, even though that might not have been your experience last week because you're new to it, it's the first time for most of you. The high level responses are generally the quickest because it's all there, you read it and you go, oh my gosh, discerning. Effective, discerning. So right then you know that it's discerning. And the really low level ones, because there's often not enough there and not a lot to read. It's the mid where you agonise over whether they're adequate or effective, and one's on the cusp of those levels. Yes?
I just had a question about our moderation meetings. Is there a set time length that they have to be or like be under?
You can set that up yourself. It's part of the learning process. And I would say that there are some assessment instruments that would take longer to moderate out there in the real world, like the IA1, for example, potentially. Speeches. I didn't give you a speech because that's a whole new thing. And you play that by ear. Schools will demarcate a time period and you've really got to mostly try and get it done in that time frame.
Well, it was more just like if we, as a group, had like a 20-minute meeting, we wouldn't be like marked down or whatever because we.
As long as you've got enough
Yeah, for
of your video to demonstrate that you've moderated and you can pull excerpts of that out to sort of link to the discussion you've had with your supervising teacher on that as compare and contrast examples.
Can we just do like a YouTube link and give you the link?
That's what we're supposed to do.
Yeah, it's in the task statement,
Yeah.
step by step, yeah. And you gotta do it as unclassed or something, what's
Unlisted.
unlisted?
Yeah, so unless you've got the link, you can't find it.
Yeah.
Would you mark us down if we had like wine and cheese and like?
No!
Oh, thank God. We want to make it fun.
Yes! Oh, look, you should have seen me. I'd be marking till midnight. There'd be chocolate Tim Tams, different chocolate,
Okay.
hot chocolate,
Yeah.
sausage rolls, chips,
Cool.
anything to get you through.
Amazing.
Make it as real world as possible.
Yeah.
Probably not a good idea to do too much of mine while you're marking, but teachers make jokes about that all the time.
So you said that we have to film 2 moderating tasks, one for the final and one for. No, it's just.
Oh, you do one video for assignment 2.
Mm-hmm.
But you use clips from your moderation meeting to help you in the final video that you make. So I guess on that point, in your group moderation meeting, I would have some rigorous conversations so you've got something to reflect on, because really you don't want your video to say, oh, everything went really swimmingly well, we all agreed, it was consensus, it was just fantastic, it was awesome, I really didn't learn much, or you want something to say.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't mean just disagree for the sake of it, but if everything's going really well, and it probably will, just have some conversations about the objectives. What do you think this actually means? And do you think this is another good example of where you might find that evidence? Just so that you're building your knowledge and you've got something to actually talk about.
Okay.
Okay. So, that's what we were going to do. But you all know that. And that's.
Was this the structure of the moderating meeting or?
This was week 5, workshop next week.
Oh, okay. I
Not
thought there was
sure
a thing
what-
down the bottom that you said, did you want to talk about the structure or did you want to move on?
Oh yes, thank
Yeah.
you. Yes,
Yeah.
no, we do.
Okay.
Yes, if you do, I do.
Yeah.
Because I'm a
Is that-
responsive.
Is that the structure of the moderating meeting?
Yes.
Yeah. Can we talk
Yes,
about that?
let's talk about that.
Is everybody okay to do that? Yeah. Okay.
What
Sorry,
do you,
I'm just like-
yeah, no, thank you for that. What do you imagine would work well?
Introducing ourselves to each other. Saying hello, asking how we are.
Yeah, because that actually, why? Why does that matter?
To settle you in and to like make sure you're all in a good place and happy to chat.
Making sure our glasses are full.
Having a cheers to start off with, maybe a debate about who likes a rosé, who likes a steak, will be how our group is starting.
And that establishes rapport and trust and a safe place.
Yes, beautiful, safe place. I love that. Very safe.
Use that phrase a lot with your students. This is a safe place, so feel free to speak your mind.
Yeah.
Okay.
Feel free. Read
So,
the class.
introductions. What else?
Ask whether or not we reading it or
What was it like to mark
Yeah.
that script by yourself?
Yeah.
Yes.
Maybe go over and have a chat about what the task was, so everyone has a refresh in their minds and you're all on the same page.
That's awesome. Write this down, guys. Step 1, establish rapport. Step 2, what was step 2? Because I actually want to move that to step 2. Discuss the assessment instrument. And then there was something else that we were talking about.
Did we like the
Yes.
reading it?
3, how did we find the process of marking by ourselves independently without anyone to talk to?
Yeah.
What was that like? Yes. Maybe step 4. And this is where you can go any which way. Do you want everyone, do you want to do a criterion by criterion, or do you want to get,
Someone read the task.
I mean, you upload student results criterion by criterion, but you might say, what out of 25 did you get it? I don't know, but you might not. You might want to go straight to the criterion. Or you might want to say, do you think it was high level, mid-level, low level? You know, so what starting point do you think would produce the best conversation?
I think it would be good to get a sense holistically of where everyone is feeling with the work generally, so that you know sort of what kind of examples you're then looking for and whether you'll need to sort of, and also let everybody know from the outset if they're going to have to defend their position and challenge it, so that you're ready, so that you know.
You'll straight away see if there's an outlier.
And after that, once we've got the sort of big picture, I will go criteria by criteria.
What is really interesting in this process is that you're all equals. There's no hierarchy. So in my mind, I'm thinking, is there going to be a natural leader who's going to be facilitating it? Is someone going to be a timekeeper? Are you going to divvy up those roles, or are you going to let it play out? I mean, you already have a nice structure starting to take shape. You know how some people are just natural at watching time, some people are natural at keeping things moving, other people are natural at making sure everyone has a chance to speak. What do you reckon? So we've said that the next step is to just get a sense of where everyone's at, high, medium, low. And then what?
Could we say maybe, well, at that point we could potentially go, all right, so now let's discuss, has anybody got like a defensive statement, or like, should,
You go just from top to bottom of the highest edges.
yeah.
Is that what you mean?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
maybe you choose knowledge, make a decision. Do you want to do textual features first? Do you want to, like in your mind, do you think one criterion is a little bit quicker and easier to mark or reach consensus on than another? Maybe, maybe not. So do you want to start with textual features, spelling, punctuation and that sort of thing, and then move into organisation development and then do knowledge application last? Or do you want to start with the hardest first while your brain is fresh? These are sort of the things to have a think about.
Maybe like in the meeting, discuss as a group where you'd like to start. Is that
Yes.
it?
Yeah, and then have some examples. Well, I would really like to start with this criterion, or I want to start with this criterion because it bothered me the most. It was the one I found absolutely the hardest to put a number on. That's okay too. Anything else?
Well, then do that.
And then you do it. You share your evidence. So you might say to someone, if someone says, I said 6 for knowledge application, then maybe around the group you say, well, where's your evidence of 6? Show me. Or you talk it through. Well, I thought it was 6 for these reasons, and then other people can say, well, no, that's not really discerning. It's actually more this for these reasons, or you know. So yeah, think about that. You'll achieve much more, much quicker, and reach consensus quicker if you have some structure in mind. Okay, anything else?
You need to reach consensus.
Oh yes, you do need to reach a consensus. So what's going to happen, do you think, if you've got 3 people in the group and one is adamant that their mark is right and the other 3 think they're right? What's the plan?
Well, at some point, we've got to agree on something. You can't just go around in circles. Yeah. So wouldn't it just be kind of like, oh well, 7 of us say that it's this, and bye.
So this is
Democracy.
democracy in action. Everybody gets their say, but not necessarily their way.
But we need to calibrate that, teacher.
Yeah, how do you do that as like a professional thing to do?
You step back and you don't want to have an argument.
Yeah.
You step back, you don't have an argument, but you go back to the evidence. Let the evidence talk for you. This can be nothing but discerning. Look at it. It's done with careful choice. Remember that word astute. Go back to the glossary. Maybe that's one step in your internal moderation meeting. Maybe that should be step 2. Talk about the qualifiers and what they actually mean. Yeah. Let the evidence do the talking for you. Okay. So that's just a reminder, go back to your task sheet, we've discussed that a lot. Now, last week, we discussed this, we had a really nice debriefing session afterwards, it probably went for about 15 minutes. What I need you to do now, if you can, is just go back to that sample assessment response. But I didn't get back from anyone, I don't think, except for one person, which is okay, I'm not upset about that. And I want you to think back and spend 5 minutes independently writing feedback to students, to that student. So now we're moving just for a little while back into that space of feedback. Now students are getting feedback because of every tick that you're placing on that ISMG, and because you're an awesome teacher and you have done so much work unpacking the objectives, that those students know what each of those ticks actually means in a real sense. But we're going to write a comment as well. What's going to go in your comment? I am going to give you 5 minutes. A lot of you had some really strong and sensible comments about student work. What do you want to help the student do? How do you want to progress that student further for next time? What is the feedback you want to give that student about their work? 5 minutes, I'll turn the clock on.
The Google Doc link is in Edmodo.
Yes, it is. Yeah, so I was questioning whether I should take that down. I was saying that sample work is so hard to get. I'm hoping you'll all write one for me. But I left it up there because I thought, well, it's gone now anyway, as soon as you put it up. I was trying to do controls up, so.
Well, I copied and pasted it and used it.
I knew it. Well, I
There-
knew
there
you
you
would
go.
do that too.
Case in
I knew
point.
it. I know. Yeah. So 5 minutes. So at exactly 2 o'clock, can I get someone? I don't want to upset my screens because I've got so many things happening. Can I have a volunteer to go into Edmodo and just make a note? And in terms of a note, just say upload your feedback to student here. We'll all know what that means. And then everyone can just type into. Always type into a Word document and then copy and paste it into Edmodo after that. Who is going to be my volunteer to just add a note, drop a note there? Someone?
To drop a note saying what, sorry?
Into Edmodo, just say EUN222, this is our place to upload our student feedback.
If I can go into Edmodo.
And that way everyone else can just hit reply and copy and paste it in from their Word document.
I don't know what the code to get into Edmodo is again.
You know, okay, Katrina, and Brooke, I've got Brooke too. I'm just going to mark you on the roll, okay?
Wonderful.
I am.
Oh, I better do that. Oh. I can mark your name on there, Kat.
Oh, excellent, thank you. And Brooke, please.
No worries.
If you can just put Zoom, we'll call them our Zoomers, just so I know that they zoomed in.
Zoomers.
Yep, they're our Zoomers.
Thanks.
Oh,
Alright.
It's supposed to be independently, so nice and quiet.
Where is Brooke? Oh, Brooke Harris. Brooke Rachel Harris?
Brooke Fraser.
Oh, who's where?
If it's not there, just pop the name underneath for me.
Yeah, there's no Brooke Fraser on here.
It's usually there.
Oh, Jasmine. Okay, yes, got it. Got it. Sorry.
Your name is Jasmine Brooke.
That's it.
Okay, so we're.
I've written in Zoom.
Yep, we've got it down now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just a quick question, Lisa.
Yeah.
If we have a group, are we supposed to email you the name or put it something?
Sorry, can you say that again?
If we form the group,
Yep.
do we email you the names?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Do you say EUN222 place to put your student feedback stuff?
We'll know what that means.
Yep, cool.
Oh, thank you for that.
That's alright. Post will be seen by, where's anyone?
Oh, is it asking you to choose a group?
Says any teacher on Edmodo, your connections.
I'll come over.
Oh, maybe it's because I haven't logged into the, have I done it wrong? Oh, is this like a teacher one? Oh, this one?
Yes.
Looking in this. So, yeah, okay, so this is it? Okay. Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Do you want student numbers for the group?
Just that's fine. Do we need to sign our names off on the roll? Has it gone around?
I haven't signed your name. Oh, yes, please. How are we going?
Do you have a group?
Another minute or so, you can try and get your student comment. It doesn't have to be perfect. We're not worried about grammar and spelling and punctuation for this. I'm looking at content. What I'm really looking at is what it is you're going to feed back to the student.
Okay, post it. Sorry, I've been distracted.
That's all right.
Alright.
It's the last box.
Oh,
And the Google, and it's on a Google Doc in Edmodo, the next post down, I think. So to refresh your memory, you can jump on there. Okay, it doesn't have to be perfect. Give you another minute just to finalise your thoughts and copy and paste onto Edmodo and we'll have a quick look at them.
so we're just getting. It's not shocking. It's minor. Do you just like a big eggplant? Sorry.
It's alright.
When figuring out when we're gonna email you.
Get that student comment up there. Come on, let's do it.
I still can't find the thing though.
Scroll down. You can't be too far down.
Oh, practice one.
Yes, that's it.
Google practice one.
Yes. And we'll just have a quick look at them all. Just sort of scroll down.
Stepping up. Well, they don't do that. It's been 2 days.
Okay, 20 seconds, over it goes. I'm going to read these ones now. Once you've done it, you can have a look at the ones that are already there. while those of you who are still posting, please do so. Some really strong feedback there actually that I think gives that student the recognition that is important, but also giving them something to work towards. And there's a really lovely tone coming through the comments as well. If I was a student getting that feedback, I know how I could improve for next time, and that's really critical. Now, some of us have probably read most of those comments. Any observations in particular?
We've all chosen different things to comment on.
Yeah, look at that. And isn't that fair and valid and reasonable? And that's how your group moderation conversations might go as well. In fact, I almost would anticipate that you will highlight different evidence for the different objectives, and that's as it's meant to be. There's no problem there. You might actually choose the same as well. If there's a blindingly brilliant discerning piece of analysis, you might all naturally just zoom in on it, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's the only example of discerning. Any other observations? Just general. I will have another look at those later tonight. Okay. Enjoyable to read those. Now we are going to do another second practice of marking, and I have updated the task just a little, and I've got some paper copies. Does everyone like working on paper last week? So it's basically the same task, but and you would have seen it anyway when you looked on Blackboard. So what I want you to do now is have a think about that feedback you just provided to the student and whether you used syllabus language. Some of you did. I could see the use of the words discerning, which is a direct correlation to the qualifier in the ISMG, which is something that we encourage. Was there precise and actionable advice? There were comments about organisation development. There was actionable advice about complex sentences and weaving in some shorter ones. That's very precise and really easy to understand and to do. The comments that I read all absolutely explain to the student what had been done well and why. There was a comment about less personal reflection, potentially. Just there. The tone, in all ones I read, was bang on. And this unambiguous language is actually really important too, because we can slip into day-to-day vernacular in comments, especially when we know the students well and we have a relationship with the student, and sometimes we might use words like good or excellent, which really don't help the student that much because they're not precise. But there is actually more that we can do. Not as in more to write, but just a structure to be mindful of. So feedback, and all the research talks about this, specifically in the educational setting, it's quite complex and doesn't always get the response from students that we want. A lot of teachers will complain that their students don't read the feedback. And some schools take that so far that the lower grades, they'll take the mark off, or they won't even give the student the mark until the student gets the feedback first, and then they'll provide the mark at a later date, just to get the student thinking about what has been done well, what could be improved on, without the mark being all that monopolises their thinking. And it's a culture. And the school that you go to might have a very set formula for you to use, or they might be very relaxed about it and just, do what you kind of will. This excellent work is interesting. I have seen student work that has been very good, and that's all the student has gotten back. That is what I would call ambiguous. What is excellent? Surely it wasn't all so good that there's nothing that I could improve upon.
That's feeding forwards, right?
Yeah.
Like giving, like it's already great, but giving it further.
Or what you would do, and we saw that in some of that feedback, discerning knowledge of the texts, like really precise, using those qualifiers from the syllabus and actually linking it to some aspect of their response. What was excellent? Was it the use of quotes? Maybe not. Maybe it was. Maybe it was a discerning use of quotes from the text, but maybe the student hadn't used them in a discerning way. When you break it down into chunks like that, look, it's not a terrible thing to add that at the end of a comment if the rest of it is quite precise and detailed and actionable. Now, that's my thought. Just very conscious of time.
Can I ask something about that?
Yes.
What happens if they got like full marks? There's nothing else that they can really improve on. Should we always be looking for something that they
No.
can improve on?
No, in some students' work I have said things like a discerning analysis of both texts, a discerning organisation of ideas and synthesis, with some really insightful comments about the representation of law, and left it at that, because if there's nothing more that you can ask of a student. But by giving them that detail, they say, okay, I've really nailed that aspect.
Yeah.
I really knew those texts. So good. Like it gives them something really precise to be proud of and to enjoy. And that way, in the next task, they know that they can do the same things, follow the same strategy that they used.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, this is really. Let's see if this works. Okay, I'm not going to push my luck because I've got 3 screens happening over there, so it's a little bit. Basically, it's a really short clip and you can access it on Blackboard anyway. But the activity was the feedback we give to students, but we don't even need to do that because we've done something far meatier and more meaningful anyway. This is kind of a brain warm-up type thing. But it was also to engage with these 4 ways of providing feedback, which was back at the start of our PowerPoint slide. So there's this process, that there are 4 levels of feedback. And what I want you to do now is have a think about those comments that you provided about that student. Where did the majority of your feedback fall? But first I am going to talk about these. There's the task level. How well the task is understood or performed. So the task was to write a reflective essay about 2 texts. Did you actually make a comment about the overall task? There's the process level. The main process needed to understand or perform the tasks. So in that particular example, it would be to analyse text in a reflective way that analyses the connection to the landscape. Did you make any comment about that at all? Because that's actually really important. That's what their thesis statement is going to be, and it's going to be required throughout the entire. It's really nice for students to get feedback that they actually argued a thesis all the way through in a discerning way, or that they didn't. In fact, when I was marking student work, I was so prescriptive that I had some abbreviations. If it was an analytical essay, at the start of every paragraph, I put topic sentence, tick, or topic sentence half, or topic sentence and a quarter. So the student knew that the entire topic sentence was there and they were arguing their thesis, or it was some of it was there, or a small amount of it was there. And then my comment would actually reflect that. So, did they actually argue something, and were they consistent throughout? Sometimes students will start out arguing one thing, then they'll change their perspective throughout. That's really important feedback, and that's all at this process level. Self-regulation level. Now this is where those really loving, caring, empathetic people like to provide reassurance and support to students. Self-regulation, self-monitoring, directing and regulating of actions. If you know something about that student, maybe that student has been dealing with stuff outside of the classroom, you can make reference to that, obviously not in great detail because it's a document. That could end up in confirmation. And that's actually something else that would be really interesting to talk to your schools about when you go out on prac. Where do they put their feedback to students? Probably not on the ISMGs, but maybe they are. I'd be interested. So this is a comment of something like, and there actually was a comment to that effect in there. You took on the feedback from a previous draft. That's self-regulation. That's actually recognising that the student engaged with all that feedback you put on that draft and spend time and effort doing it. It's also valuing to that student the process of the drafting, and then if another student sees that comment on that student's work, that student then is getting the message that, hang on, drafts actually mean something, maybe I should take it more seriously. So it has a potential to have a ripple-on effect. But that student's getting a slap on the back saying, good job, you listened, and as a result, you did better. So maybe the student was really organised more so than usual, or avoided distractions, something that you can recognise or reward the student for. Something like you worked really hard on breaking down the two texts. You might know that the student hated the text, struggled with the text, but this is something where you can reward hard work or effort. And then self-level personal evaluations and effect, usually positive about the learner, and that's what we tend to do the most of, like excellent work, or I used to say things like, if I was marking a Year 12 narrative, I'd do all this, and then I'd say at the end, you transported me to another place, thanks for that. Because we know that that's one of the intentions of a short story, is to transport the reader somewhere else. So it could be something along those lines. You could probably argue that even that comment I made might even overlap a little bit between this one and this one. That's okay too. Or you might say solid effort. You're learning about the patterns and conventions of the reflective essay has improved enormously. And even that, you can see that I'm so bound to these that I keep